Hi, I'm Rashonda Kay. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We're making our way through, we have about 40 pages left, which is, I don't know, still a lot of reading to do, but look, this is what we have left, and this is what we've done. Look at us. We are making our way through this book. Today we are on chapter 25. It's called Balance All, and we just might make it through this whole chapter. If I don't get too sidetracked, we should be good to go. The road to Sampson County lay for the most part over the pine-clad sand hills, an alternation of gentle rises and gradual descents, with now and then a swamp of greater or less extent. Long stretches of the highway led through the virgin forest, for miles unbroken by a clearing or sign of human habitation. They traveled slowly, with frequent pauses in shady places, for the weather was hot. The journey, made leisurely, required more than a day, and might with slight effort be prolonged into two. They stopped for the night at a small village where Wayne found lodging for Rena with an acquaintance of his, and for himself with another, while a third took charge of the horse, the accommodations for travelers being limited. Rena's appearance and matters were the subject of much comment. It was necessary to explain to several curious white people that Rena was a woman of color. Isn't that fascinating? It was necessary to explain to several curious white people that Rena was a woman of color. No, she's not one of you. She's one of us. But she looks like one of us. No, she's one of us. Like they're getting in a fight. Okay, oh, that's how it happened in my head. Like fights are breaking out over this woman's race. A white woman might have driven with Wayne without attacking remark. Most white ladies had Negro coachmen. That a woman of Rena's complexion should eat at a Negro's table or sleep beneath a Negro's roof was a seeming breach of caste which only black blood could excuse. The explanation was never questioned. No white person of sound mind would ever claim to be a Negro. We definitely have nowadays people saying they are all kinds of things, and people can express themselves however they want, but I'm thinking of Rachel Dolezal, I think was her name, who was like all in the NAACP and was pretending she was black and she was white. What struck me as particularly, like, I don't know how she felt on the inside, but what struck me as particularly odd about that is that you can be in the NAACP and do all the things without having to be black. Like, that confused me. But anyway, no white person of sound mind would ever claim to be a Negro, and I would say mostly that's true today. You're not going to say you're black if you're not. I know as a black person, if somebody tells me they're black, I believe them. I mean, not that people are going up telling me they're black or whatever, but if somebody says they're black, okay, I believe you, because why would you make that up? Now, I think it's awesome to be black, but I also know what it's like to be black in this country, and I have heard, I've not done it myself, but I have heard research that, like, if you ask a room full of white people if they're racist or, whatever, they're going to be like, no, of course not. And then if you ask them, would you trade places with a black person? They would also be like, oh no, because everything's not going to go down the way I want it to go down. Anyway, they resumed their journey somewhat late in the morning. Rena would willingly have hastened, for she was anxious to plunge into her new work, but Wayne seemed disposed to prolong the pleasant drive and beguiled the way for a time with stories of wonderful things he had done and strange experiences of a somewhat checkered career. He was shrewd enough to avoid any subject which would offend a modest young woman, but too obtuse to perceive that much of what he said would not commend him to a person of refinement. He made little reference to his possessions, concerning which so much had been said at Patesville, and this reticence was a point in his favor. If he had not been so much upon his guard, and Rena so much absorbed by thoughts of her future work, such a drive would have furnished a person of her discernment a very fair measure of the man's character. To these distractions must be added the entire absence of any idea that Wayne might have amorous designs upon her. Why did she not think this? I don't understand. But anyway, and any shortcomings of manners or speech were excused by the broad mantle of charity which Rena, in her newfound zeal for the welfare of her people, was willing to throw over all their faults. Does that ring weird to you too? And any shortcomings of manners or speech were excused by the broad mantle of charity which Rena, in her newfound zeal for the welfare of her people, was willing to throw over all their faults. I am your savior, come to uplift you. Look at me in the uplift movement as I uplift. I'm actually don't mind the uplift movement, but if it's done with a heart of superiority, like that's not cool. They were victims of oppression. They were not responsible for its results. So that's still Rena talking about the broad mantle of charity. This rings poorly with me. Toward the end of the second day, while nearing their destination, the travelers passed a large white house standing back from the road at the foot of the lane. Around it grew wide-spreading trees and well-kept shrubbery. The fences were in good repair. Behind the house and across the road stretched extensive fields of cotton and waving corn. They had passed no other place that showed such signs of thrift and prosperity. "Oh, what a lovely place!" exclaimed Rena. "That is yours, isn't it?" "No, we ain't got to my house yet," he answered. "That house belongs to the richest people around here. That house is over in the next county. We're right close to the line now." Shortly afterwards, they turned off from the main highway they had been pursuing and struck into a narrower road to the left. "The main road," explained Wayne, "goes on to Clinton, about 5 miles or more away. This one we're turning into now will take us to my place, which is about 3 miles further on. We'll get there now in an hour or so." Wayne lived in an old plantation house, somewhat dilapidated and surrounded by an air of neglect and shiftlessness. Man, although I shouldn't talk, my house probably looks like it is surrounded by an air of neglect and shiftlessness. But still preserving a remnant of dignity. Diggity? "I like the way you work it. No diggity. I got to back it up, man. I like the way you work it. No diggity. Do, 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 do." Okay, clearly this didn't say diggity. That's just what I read. Let me start this over again. Wayne lived in an old plantation house, somewhat dilapidated and surrounded by an air of neglect and shiftlessness, but still preserving a remnant of dignity in its outlines and comfort in its interior arrangements. Rena was assigned a large room on the second floor. She was somewhat surprised at the makeup of the household. Wayne's mother, an old woman much darker than her son, kept house for him. A sister with 2 children lived in the house. The element of surprise lay in the presence of 2 small children left by Wayne's wife, of whom Rena now heard for the first time. He had lost his wife, he informed Rena sadly, a couple of years before. So Wayne doesn't talk about his kids at all, just like Warwick. Warwick has a son? What? Huh? "Ah, yes, Miss Rena," he sighed. "The Lord give her and the Lord took her away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." He accompanied this sententious quotation with a wicked look from under his half-closed eyelids that Rena did not see. The following morning, Wayne drove her in his buggy over to the county town where she took the teacher's examination. She was given a seat in a room with a number of other candidates for certificates, but the fact leaking out from some remark of Wayne's that she was a colored girl, objection was quietly made by several of the would-be teachers to her presence in the room, and she was requested to retire until the white teacher should have been examined. Really? You can't even take a teacher's examination in the same room, and nobody knew that she was white except for Wayne had a big mouth? Come on now. An hour or two later, she was given a separate examination, which she passed without difficulty. The examiner, a gentleman of local standing, was dimly conscious that she might not have found her exclusion pleasant, and was especially polite. He was dimly conscious that she might not have found her exclusion pleasant. Well, of course she did not find her exclusion pleasant. I'm glad he was at least dimly aware of this. It would have been strange indeed if he had not been impressed by her sweet face and air of modest dignity, which were all the more striking because of her social disability. Wow, being a Black person that is not visibly Black is a social disability. He fell into conversation with her, became interested in her hopes and aims, and very cordially offered to be of service if at any time he might, in connection with her school. "You have the satisfaction," he said, "of receiving the only first grade certificate issued today. You might teach a higher grade of pupils than you will find at Sandy Run, but let us hope that you may in time raise them to your own level." "Which I doubt very much," he muttered to himself as she went away with Wayne. What a pity that such a woman should be a nigger. If she were anything to me, though, I should hate to trust her anywhere near that saddle-colored scoundrel. He's a thoroughly bad lot and will bear watching. Rena, however, was serenely ignorant of any danger from the accommodating Wayne. Absorbed in her own thoughts and plans, she had not sought to look beneath the surface of his somewhat overdone politeness. In a few days, she began her work as teacher and sought to forget in the service of others the dull sorrow that still gnawed at her heart. And we made it through that entire chapter. Go us, with only a few digressions. And that was, what chapter was that? 25, I think. I already closed my book. Yes, that was chapter 25 of The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda.